When Molly visited her husband's grave one Tuesday to clean it up, she noticed an unusual hole in the ground that hadn't been there before. Curious, she decided to dig it up to see what it was, and what she discovered was simply shocking. Ever since her husband had passed away the previous year, Molly had made it a routine to visit him every Tuesday. It was like their date night, although now she was the only one who talked. She would visit his grave, share updates about her life, clean up around his headstone, and then head home. She had become quite familiar with the cemetery, especially his little area. So when she saw the mysterious-looking hole one Tuesday in the fall, it immediately caught her attention. She was busy cleaning away all the fallen leaves from his headstone when she happened to notice what looked like a small hole nearby. At first, she didn't think much of it, but then curiosity got the better of her. She moved closer to the hole and moved the leaves that had fallen on top. This revealed a much bigger hole than she had initially expected. It was about a hand deep and had some freshly dug up soil loose in it. This struck her as quite strange. There was supposed to be no digging around grave sites unless, of course, it was for a grave. This type of activity was often thought to be quite suspicious due to grave robbers, but Molly wasn't convinced that was the case here. Something in her gut told her it was something else. She then considered whether maybe it was just a dog that had gotten bored and wandered away from its owner, only to dig a hole for fun. As much as she wanted to believe that this was the case with the hole, she knew deep down that it just wasn't the case. There was something sinister behind the hole. She could just feel it. So she resigned herself to the fact that she would return the next day with a small garden spade and dig up the hole to see if there was anything worth noting hidden underneath. So she did just that. The very next day, the moment the cemetery opened, she slipped in with her little garden spade to do some investigating. She didn't care too much for illegal activity, especially if it was near her late husband's grave. She just wouldn't stand for it. It took her a good moment to find the hole again, thanks to the fallen leaves. While she looked at it, she was sure that it had been stuffed with leaves as a disguise, rather than them having just fallen into the hole naturally. She hadn't noticed this before. This just seemed to make the hole even more intriguing. She tried not to look too suspicious. She knew she wasn't doing anything wrong, she just couldn't help but feel weird doing it. Molly pulled the stuffed leaves right out of the hole and began to work at the freshly turned soil that filled it with the little spade. It took her quite a while to get going, but once the top layer was loose, she was able to get quite a bit of soil out. It wasn't long then that she felt her little spade hit something hard. It sounded like metal on metal, but Molly had to look to be 100% sure. Sure enough, there it was, a shiny, unlabeled metal box. It had a little padlock on it, and that was it. It was clearly hiding something important, something someone wanted to keep safe and away from prying hands. However, Molly just got angry when she saw the box. She was incensed at the mere thought that someone thought it might be okay to hide something near her husband. It was highly disrespectful. Of course, her anger only grew when she tried to open the box. The padlock was incredibly strong and no match for her banging the box on the ground, so she resorted to using the hand spade she had. Sure enough, it didn't take long at all before the padlock had been knocked and cracked open by the spade. What she found inside confused her when she saw it. It simply held packets of what seemed to be some kind of flour or white powder. She was unfamiliar with such stuff, so she decided she would do the sensible thing and call the police, though only after she got back to the car. After all, she didn't want whoever had buried the box to come after her and hurt her. As she made her way back to her car, she happened to pass by two young men walking quickly past her. They were wearing hooded sweaters with baseball caps and didn't seem too mournful. Molly got a horrible feeling. She moved as quickly as she could to the car, got in, and locked the doors. She placed the metal box next to her on the passenger seat. She then placed a call to the police. While she was on the call, she explained to the police what she had found and asked what the next step was. They told her to bring the box in so that they could take her statement at the same time. As she was about to put the phone down, she saw two young men come scrambling out of the cemetery. They stopped at the entrance and scanned the parking lot. When they saw her car, they started running towards her. Molly was petrified. She screamed, and the police asked her urgently what was going on. She explained that two men were rushing up to the car. Before she could even start the car, they were next to her window, trying to smash it with their fists. When that didn't work, they stopped to look for a rock. Molly took this opportunity to start her car and race away as fast as she could. Molly drove straight to the police station, absolutely frazzled by what had just happened. She broke down when the police asked her to tell them what had occurred. They looked gravely concerned when they heard that the men had tried to attack her and immediately sent out a task team to arrest them. She then handed over the metal box to the police, saying she wasn't sure what was inside. They popped it open and were horrified to see what was inside. Sure enough, the box held quite a few pounds of drugs, stuff that had been leaking onto the streets and making people a little crazy. They explained that they had been trying to track down the dealers of the drugs, as it was new and very dangerous. But every time they had done a raid at the suspected establishment, they turned up empty-handed. One of their specialist detectives had eventually come to the conclusion that they must have had special stashing spots for the drugs so that they could never be caught with it. How true that turned out to be. It just took an elderly lady stumbling upon one hiding place to blow the case wide open. This, of course, was simply shocking for Molly. She had grown up in the area her entire life. She was unaccustomed to such criminal activities. Maybe her husband had been aware of it and sheltered her. She wasn't entirely sure. All she knew was that it maddened her terribly that it had taken place by his grave. She shared her frustration with the policeman. They shared her sentiment, but explained that cemeteries were, in fact, a very popular spot for this kind of criminal activity. That's because it was the last place people would expect it to happen, just as she had thought. The tasked team managed to track down the two young men and arrested them successfully. Molly hung around to help identify them. After all, they had attacked her, and regardless of their connection to the drugs, they had still committed a crime. It didn't take long, though, for the investigators to pressure them into cracking. They were annoyed by the old woman interfering with their business and getting them caught. Molly went home that day, utterly exhausted from the morning's events. Never in her life had she imagined she would be involved in a crime, especially not while visiting her late husband. In the end, she was grateful that everything had worked out well and believed there must have been some kind of guardian angel watching over her. What a crazy turn of events for someone just visiting their late partner. Would you have investigated this hole? What would you have done when the men came after you? Would you have guessed that cemeteries were used for these purposes? I'm eager to know your thoughts, so please share your insights in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video and found it engaging, I invite you to subscribe to our channel for more similar content. Feel free to share this video with your friends and family to spread the enjoyment. Take good care of yourselves, and I look forward to connecting with you in our future videos.